didn't even know there's like a difference between the two.
Yeah, so the only reason that I even was like, let's do the AMA channel is because the AMA channel lets you like request to speak rather than like everyone can automatically speak. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So that was the thinking there is then it's just like a little more of like a normal quote unquote format, but this will be fine. I'm not worried about it. So let's kick things off. We're at 5 minutes after here. We're planning 25, 30 minutes. And guys, we want to start doing these like every week and just going over what it is that we're working on and progress that has been made so you guys can see what's kicking off. So if you will look on the top left corner here, we have Kinetic is now streaming. And you can see what he is streaming is one of the new map areas that has been getting developed. So, Kinetic, I will let you kick it off as to what we are looking at here, my guy.
Yeah, so part of the process of building this world is going to be like basically with environment design, you got to start off with blockouts, get the main shape of the buildings, the layout, and basically go from there and then work down iteratively with the decorations and all the other details, the fine details, the grunge maps, the decals, the posters, and all the scratches and stuff. Basically, that's where all the cyberpunk feel will come in. Right now, this is just a Blender scene. This is not Unreal. So I've only isolated the buildings that I've worked on this past week. Uh, the reason why we're focusing on the harbor right now is because this is in Unreal Engine. The Monkey Tower is located right here or somewhere in that area. And all of this is going to be like an open area. And in terms of the accessible city, what we're planning to release in the first version of the open world is going to be a city block roughly around this size. And it's just basically going to be enough to get everyone using the system in the game, using what we have already so far in terms of the development pipeline. When it comes to hashing out the rest of the city, of course it's going to take time. I mean, these things take time, but we are making progress, and it's a daily routine for me now. Like myself, I'm I'm working on this thing 10, sometimes 15 hours a day, and by no fault of my own, that's just my life. I love it. So this is the Central Ferry Pier in Hong Kong Harbor. This is one of the few buildings that we plan on actually building to like a replicable scale and design that matches the current version of it right now. Most of the other buildings that we plan on integrating into the Hong Kong Yakuverse are going to be essentially like, what is it like 500 years in the future? That's the cyberpunk metaverse that we envision. But as it is, this is one of the buildings that we plan on making like it is in real life. This building here is the Hong Kong Maritime Museum. And if I remember correctly, this is part of it as well. They still have harbor access, of course, and boats do use it. So what I've done is I made sure these are the buildings I focused most of my attention on this first week, was because they're going to be fully playable. Every square foot of the buildings that I've modeled over this past week is fully walkable. And although it may look like it's not very cyberpunk right now, mostly because of the lighting and the fact that there's not a lot of details in here, this is just the basic modeling right now. Those details will be implemented inside of Unreal Engine as we build the project. So over the course of the next few weeks, our plans are to, of course, iterate down in scale, as I mentioned before.
Yeah, and I think
So keeping in line with that,
just a quick
yeah, go ahead,
note.
Papa.
One of the things that I really like to call out is like the level of original content that is being developed. So not only are these guys like going in and making these 3D environments from scratch, but when you see the final version of this, I mean, it's going to be filled with plant life, with posters, with neon lighting, with directional signs, all this stuff. And so all of that is being developed fully in-house. We're not like going out and just like buying assets to plug and play. So it's I mean it's a huge undertaking. So I'm personally very glad with the progress so far because this is just like Kinetic said what he's been working on this past week specifically. So there's other things that have already been getting worked on. This whole area is getting developed out, and that first playable block will allow us to do a few things from a testing perspective. So one, we'll be able to test first version of the multiplayer system and understanding how does it react to the number of players that we first put in there, how does it load, how do things move and scale. And in addition to the multiplayer system, it's also going to allow you all to test out any bugs that there may be in what's been built here so that as we integrate these other areas that they also get the same upgraded treatment. So when they get unlocked, we're not having revisions after revisions that are sort of monotonous and repetitious, right? So it's easier to scale when we start a little smaller, even though it's hilarious. Like this one area will be huge. Like I think from like a square footage standpoint, this first area that gets unlocked will be already like 4 to 5 times larger than the existing portals like downtown, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of about 5 or 6 city blocks in terms of like square kilometers, however you want to act your measurements out. It's very large, yes, huge. And if anybody's played like Cyberpunk 2077 most recently, yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. I'm really excited to get some of this all hashed out and working completely functionable. But like you said, there is going to be process of development along the way. So we're going to be releasing content in these packages to you guys to play live and in real time as we're developing them. And unlike a lot of the major game projects out there, they don't do that. I mean, you got to wait till the game's done, and well, unless you have a failure like some games that I'll not mention right now. But
Or unless you want to sell 97 DLCs.
yeah, of course, right? Yeah, it's going to be pretty cool. Another thing that we were planning on integrating relatively soon, we're not sure exactly when, so don't quote me on any timing, is the ability to transport within the harbor system, right? Because a lot of Hong Kong is along the shoreline. So using the boats that I'll remain nameless right now when that might happen, but the boats and a ferry that will help facilitate transportation throughout the city and along the harbor. And this is basically like the start of what the terminals will look like. It's kind of dark in here. Let me just tone up the lights a bit. But this is one of the buildings that are modeled fairly closely to how they are in real life. So now that the blockouts are done and the layout's done the way they are in real life, it's time to cyberpunk the living shit out of this place. And that's all, like I said, going to get done in Unreal Engine.
Yeah, and the other thing that I really like about the ferry system is, to me, it helps facilitate a much better experience for people who do not necessarily have what will inevitably be like the high-end in-world products, right? So when we think about like the bikes, I would say are always going to be probably the premier form of transportation. We've got boats coming. Those are not going to be available to everyone because obviously they're a very limited quantity. And so I think ferries and systems like that, like we've, I think, internally talked a little bit about like a tram situation of some sort, will help like facilitate a good user experience for people who can't necessarily afford to own their own kind of transportation. So like when we talk about mass adoption, obviously we want these pivotal key forms of transportation to be faster, to be cooler, to be more rewarding. Obviously, like they come with staking and access to future drops and all that stuff. But we don't want that to mean that if you're just someone that doesn't have a bike or a boat, that it takes you 5 hours to walk from point A to point B.
That's right. Yeah, and we're not even sure if we're going to be using some kind of transportation system that like goes outside the bounds of realism. In other words, like a transporter or like a quick travel. We're not sure if that's going to be something we're going to integrate yet. It's still kind of questionable whether or not that's going to be something we want to do, but it's still up for debate. We haven't decided on that yet.
So kinetic. So
yeah,
everyone. So everyone
not,
knows about.
we're not.
Generally speaking, like what we're looking at here, where we have like the pump station and the two buildings for the museum slash the ferry system. Like roughly how long of a process is it to create this much building exterior infrastructure?
Well, what you see here took me approximately, it was around 10 or 14 days to get this done. There are parts of the building, like the main shape of this structure here came as a like a template, and I did some modifications to the UVs, which are like developer code for like the texture maps. And as you can see, like when you get really close to these textures, there's a lot of detail that you're not seeing inside here. But once it's in Unreal Engine, this will all be basically, I don't want to say indistinguishable from real, but it's going to look pretty fucking awesome. Especially when you get into some of these photoreal textures that we're using. We're going to try to make this as much of an immersive experience as possible, and I think we're gonna pull it off. We got a pretty solid team of artists.
Yeah, I like to underscore the time it takes because obviously now like the team is growing. We've got a solid number of people working on things, and so even though this one area takes you 10 to 14 days, that means realistically with the size of the people working on this now, every 10 to 14 days we're almost getting another city block done essentially, right? And really probably more than that because these buildings are significantly larger than most that are going to be made.
Yeah,
It really
well, I think.
depends. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You haven't spoken yet.
Yeah,
I
what's
need a
up,
break.
Mine? Introduce yourselves to the people.
Um, to answer the question, uh, it really depends on what type of building it is, how it looks from outside, if it has some extra detail that we have to add on that. It's not always the same. So, for instance, one building might take um, 1 day, and another might take 10 days. It's not always the same case. Other than that, actually, that I don't have anything.
Yeah, you bring up a good point because it really depends on such a large number of factors when we're designing these buildings. The placement, where it is in relation to the buildings around it. How do we integrate the street level artistry? Like, how are we going to tie in the roads with the sidewalks and make it so that it's still a cohesive environment? Like with level design, generally, you have a lot of factors to consider, like player movement. Where are they going? You got to lead the player throughout the level, right? Well, we're not doing that necessarily because it's like a replica of Hong Kong and it's our own metaverse and it's just an open world. It's not necessarily just a game. So we have a variety of different capacities to consider when we're modeling these things. And the details do change with every building completely.
And there's also the case that um, in some cases, usually at least what I do, there's this workflow. Sometimes with something, maybe a building could be, and I add this building in Unreal Engine so I can try it, and maybe the surroundings of it, see how it feels in game. And in some cases, it works perfectly fine, and in some others, I have to go make some modifications, go back in again, see how it behaves, and same thing, go back and bring it in, make modifications, etc., etc. So there's also this part with some cases.
Yes, the testing pipeline, because like Pappy said at the very beginning, we're not just using like kit bash assets we buy off of marketplaces. We're doing everything from scratch, and not to our own demise because it does take longer, but because we need to be able to understand what it is we're using. If we buy an asset, for instance, like many projects do, and we try to integrate it in like a plugin or an extension or a set of blueprints that are pre-made, if we have an issue with it or it doesn't mesh well with another system inside the project, we basically have to reverse engineer it anyway. So the amount of time it takes for us to learn how that thing works is, if not more than the equivalent of what it would take to build it in the first place. So that's why it's better for us to just build from scratch, do what we know, and master our art, and continue iterating from there.
Yeah, and sometimes, as Kinetic said some minutes ago, when we use a template, for example, as the repair center, so pretty much that means that we get building part a 3D model that looks correct to the sizes and stuff like that in real life, and then we try to make it as close to real life. So we just use the template as a block art pretty much. So this repair center was like a very simple building. It has some boxes, and it was texture for all the faces of the building. But I use it to make the proportions of it. And when you get the version, you might as well recognize some other buildings from Hong Kong, like the Bank of China, which with some buildings, we thought, at least the most iconic ones, we could possibly use them as they are with a few modifications.
So I'm just curious. We've got several people tuning in here. Does anyone have a question for these guys about what they're looking at, the downtown in general? And whilst people are coming up with questions, feel free. You can unmute and ask, or just tag me in general chat if you cannot talk on voice. I am going to ask mine. I'm going to put you on the spot. Can we get some footage maybe of like a van driving downtown, getting on the screen share?
At the moment, unfortunately, no. And there's also this problem that sometimes now I'm using for the microphone like NVIDIA Broadcast, and for some reason it tends to use randomly some like 10% or 30% of the GPU sometimes, and this crashes both Discord and Unreal Engine for some reason.
Guys, I tried to help. I tried to get you the alpha because I knew that if I didn't ask, someone will be bugging me for it. So I gave it my best shot.
Living up to your reputation, indeed.
If anyone has a fix for that, that would be great. Because, at least, specifically for me talking, I use a 3090 and have 4 GB of RAM or VRAM, and randomly I get spikes from the NVIDIA Broadcast that went up to 10, maybe sometimes 12 gigabytes. And, yeah, some VRAM leaks there with the software.
I still think that's because you're running a Windows PC, but that's just my opinion.
Good to yourself.
There's a running joke between the two of us. He runs his main rig on Windows, and I'm on Linux. Because, well, I have my reasons. I think it's much better, but whatever. To his defense, I have to have my other rig on Windows because most of the hard programs that we run do require Windows operating systems. So I have 2 computers that I work simultaneously. One one for Unreal Engine basically and development work. And my Linux PC, which is the one you're looking through now, is basically what I use for all my modeling and whatnot.
My man's running that Linux like he used to go shopping on Silk Road.
Yeah. Man, this thing is so fast. I'm telling you, Linux is, but that's just my opinion. I'm still dumb. Like I'm not like a fucking programmer or nothing. Like Death Man, that guy's crazy good at what he does. But if I have a problem with my computer, I just Google the shit out of it, and you usually hash it out.
I used to run a Linux virtual machine off of a USB hard drive. Don't read too far into that.
We'll just leave it there. I'm pretty sure I know where you're going with that.
Well, seriously, guys, we're trying to run like
Questions,
30 minutes
questions.
on these. Yeah, we got like 5-ish minutes left. Any questions about like level design in general, future of the downtown map? You're welcome. You beat me guys for alpha all the time. This is an opportunity to beat the design team directly. Feel free.
Uh-oh, what did I do?
Oh no, shoot, is that free alpha?
Parking garage.
Oh no. Oh
Where?
no,
Where do you want it?
Oh no, is that free alpha?
I don't know where it should go, but there should be one.
So like a general consensus would be if you and your friends want to get together and your capsule only has room for one bike, there should be a place to park your bike while you go visit your friend. Is that kind of where you're alluding to?
Yeah. Or, yeah, having some space that you can, or rent that space out to someone else if they need to park.
Yeah, these are the fun
I'm not going to say
questions.
definitively, but I'm pretty sure we've discussed something very similar to what you're talking about.
Yeah, these
And
are the fun
let's
things
just
to
say
think through. Is
it
like, is it going to be possible to just park your bike literally anywhere and get off and walk off, or do you have to take it to a parking spot? Like these are some of the specifics that we need to still figure out. And I think probably Kinetic, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We're probably leaning towards parking spots.
parking spots would probably be the best because that way there's a way for the game to know where you left your machine, whether it's a van or a bike or a hoverboard or however you plan on transporting yourself. So it's like a save state, I think, the way I understand it. And if you were to leave your bike somewhere, and then go wander off and then do some shopping and then come back to your bike. If it's not there, that's a problem, right? And that means that there's an issue with when you detach yourself from it in virtual space, it's still part of your wallet because it's your bike. But if that game is not recognizing it as a save state, then it won't be able to come back to it, right? And it'll just disappear. So it's going to have to be managed on runtime from how I understand it. But I am not the best game dev programmer to ask that question to.
Yeah, that sounds more like an org question in terms of the technical part at least.
Definitely an orc question. Sometimes I talk out of my ass, and you got to stop me before I get out of hand.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, Orc, the elusive Orc, is our CTO. And the likelihood of you ever catching him on a voice chat is very little. He is a genius and a recluse, but the guy knows Unreal Engine like crazy. So he got his start like, it's been over 20 years ago now at his first AAA studio. And he knows Unreal Engine very well. Ooh, that screenshot looks fucking fire.
I'm not supposed to do this. Mine's gonna kill me. He's probably gonna like not talk to me for a week because I showed the rest of the city.
Yeah, but look at it, dude. It's fucking sexy.
Yeah.
Imagine not being on this
So-
right now. Imagine not being tuned in to look at this in all its glory.
Yeah, seeing it in an image is different than seeing it in like real time 3D. Even though it's not finished, like there's no roads, there's no walking paths in this file. Um, it's just it's so much different when you have this kind of perspective, right? And keep in mind, like what I'm showing you guys right now, this is like a working file. This is where we build the models and whatnot. We don't put all the details, like how the little stuff goes, right? That's all done in a different file.
And
Maybe
one
in one of the future streams, you can see that.
one of the questions we just got in general chat was if you will be able to hoverboard through here. So for those of you that remember, a while ago we actually showed a sneak peek of the hoverboard working, and so yes, you will be able to do that. I don't know the exact mechanism yet. I think it's going to be just one of those things that's like key bound, and if you have one of those items that can be used, it'll be like, as an example, you hit the key H and you deploy the hoverboard and get it righted around, and then hit H again to put it back. Something along those lines. Don't quote me on the exact machinations of it, but something along those lines. So yes, you will be able to eventually.
I don't know if you've ever been to this ferry terminal in Hong Kong, but I have many times. And there's all kinds of little vendors and things that are outside when you approach it to come up to it to
Yeah.
come in. And so it's going to be exciting to see that kind of stuff out there, the little carts and all the other stuff.
Yeah, so those are some of those finer details I was mentioning earlier. I have another file. We're gonna wait till next week to show you guys that I'm working on, and that's where I'm building a lot of custom props and props as in planters and light fixtures, benches, all that stuff. The stuff that we need to populate all these areas. And some of those will include street side vendors or the appearance of them. They may not be functional right away. It's going to take quite a bit of time to develop these because there's like a metric shit ton of geometry that goes into making these things look good, and it's going to take some time to get these out. But I'm extremely excited to see how
Well,
this area is going to turn out later.
and people will see on the first multiplayer beta. So there's already implemented in that version 1 NPC. So we integrated that Take Keith avatar from Anybody's, and it's posted up behind the DJ booth in Monkey Tower, and we've already got like animations rigged to him, so it looks like he's DJing back there dancing. So it'll be fun, I think, to do similar things like that on the open map. So exactly like we were talking about LFG Whale, like being able to have an NPC hot dog guy behind the hot dog cart that like waves at people as they walk by. It looks like he's flipping hot dogs, things like that. Like those little things will really help set the scene. And eventually, very, very long term, the hope is as we get more like Web 2 partners or Web 3 partners with businesses, that we can also make some of those areas like actually interactive storefronts. Like I would love to get a partnership with, as an example, Nathan's Hot Dogs, right? And make it so every hot dog cart is a Nathan's Hot Dog cart where you can actually buy like Nathan's goods directly from it. And that's like a very possible future. It's just going to take time to do that. The other question we got in the general chat was, are there going to be like invisible walls or anywhere for areas that cannot be accessed? Like example, Monkey Tower, if you're not a monkey holder. And I think that how we're actually going to do that is it'll be like doors. So rather than like a clear wall, it'll be like a door that just doesn't open if you don't hold the necessary token to access it.
What if y'all did it in a way where like people could enter the building, but that you had like some kind of like NPC that was a security guard, but you can't go through the turnstile. So like you can get in and walk around in there, but you can't actually go in.
So the way I've been seeing some of the, is that mine talking?
Yeah, it was me, but just go ahead. Probably we're
No, no,
saying the
no.
same thing.
You take over it. I talk way more than you. Go ahead.
What I was about to say about that is that in areas that general and not about just buildings, in areas that you won't be able to go, as long as we can, we'll try to make it in a smarter way, as you said, like in a more visual appealing way, as you said, with security guard and stuff like that. But in some cases, there might be invisible walls. I don't know. We'll see how this um, goes over the course of time. Because we'll have to make some tries in the game to see how this works. If it works with security guards or whatever, or some sort of fence, it could be great. But if there are cases that we can't do anything else, then we'll probably use invisible walls. Oh, heck it. I finished. The way I think that you're modeling right now, this bridge is on the left side.
And I love,
I'm just playing around with geometry while
yeah, I
you're
was gonna say I
talking.
love that you're just playing around building shit while we're in here talking. Any other questions, guys? I'm checking general chat one more time here real quick. Michael still asking if we're getting Wendy's. They're a huge, gigantic company that moves very slow. So the answer is yes. I just don't know how long. What about the Audius range for parties outside? So Audius, we have a really good relationship with those guys. I saw them again at Lisbon, and so we're definitely going to be doing more with them. We had actually talked a while ago about trying to host some sort of launch party on the first day of the initial launch of downtown. So that might be something cool. What I want to do with them specifically is like an Audius event center that is sponsored by them, where we can hold conferences and things, or concerts, obviously in line with what they've got going on, and have live music experiences there sponsored by Audius, which I think would be sick.
I have a question, and I don't know if it can be answered, but do we have like an ETA on when like the multiplayer would be sort of launched? Maybe we'll get the update tomorrow, but any sort of range on it.
So we've been using it internally and testing it. I think you've seen it, right, Michael?
Yeah.
So internally, we've been using it. It had some issues on the first iteration we used with proximity chat, where it didn't want to work properly. Those have now been sorted. So now it is like final round of bug testing. So I don't know that I can give an exact timeline. Mine actually might be the best person to answer that, because I don't want to say something that's shorter than realistic. But I mean, we're like 95% there. So mine, I don't know if you have a general time frame that you think is realistic.
For multiplayer, like technical speaking, probably I agree with you. We're 95% there, but in terms of designing the areas that you would be able to go on the first stage, like the therapy and stuff, those need they need some work to be done, because they're, as Kinetic said, like almost in the start, there's no roads, there's no sidewalks, not much stuff. So ideally, I would love to have some better looking areas that people could visit and play around. So
Yeah, and I think that's important, because that first look that people have when they first enter needs to be like very impactful, right? Like, we don't want to send people out into an open, empty area that looks unfinished. And I think that's sort of the reason why we're doing the progression we are, starting with a smaller scope and then broadening out the downtown as things get done, right? Is so that we can make sure that every area we release is really top quality. So if I were to give a general timeline, we're probably, okay, there's two options, I guess, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Mine. Option one is we could release something sooner that is only available within Monkey Tower. So you have like a very, very small area that you're exploring, but you get to test at least the multiplayer systems, proximity chat, all that, but you don't actually get access to the downtown. The second version is we release it with access to Monkey Tower and the first area of downtown surrounding it, which would take a little more time. So I guess maybe that might be actually some good feedback. Maybe we can run like a poll and see which direction people might be more intrigued on, whether they just want to test the multiplayer systems first in a very limited area, or if they prefer to just wait and get a big splash into a larger area. I mean, mine, do you think that that's realistically sort of what we're hovering in between right now?
Yeah, Apple might be the best option here because um, there are pros and cons, as you said. Uh, People in first person, people get earlier access to be able to test and play around, and but they won't be able to get the first area. And then second version, that they have to wait more. Um, yeah, so probably that's uh, on the community side, I guess. At least that would be my opinion. And uh, of course, we'll try to when we release the first stage that you will be able to test around like in the peripheral and stuff like that. It will still not be perfect, but it will be more of it will be playable, and you would have stuff to see. It's not gonna be empty. It's not going to be perfect, and we'll improve this as we go.
Yeah, I agree. It's just going to get better over time as we release different versions. We're going to be adding things that weren't present in the once completed area with each iteration. So in this case here, if our first version has an area like this that's ready to play on the ground, plus all the capsules, and say a few months down the road we release another set of city blocks over here in this area, we'll have added other details to this place too, because as we grow the library of materials and decals and files, we'll be applying them to the rest of the city as we go. And that's just part of being like in a project that is fully transparent with its production pipeline, which is I don't know, I don't know of any other gaming companies that have ever done this before, like at least not on this scale. I think it's really cool that you guys are all going to be able to basically grow with us. And I mean, there's nothing saying that you guys can't make suggestions and we can make improvements as we're releasing these updates too.
We've got two other questions from general chat. The first one, will High Roller Hippo Click Casino be ready? And so actually, to put in perspective, guys, like how crazy the level of development on this already is. So the High Roller Hippo Click team is so bullish on Metaverse, they actually hired their own internal designers. So they've been working on their own building, and they're still working on it. And you remember, it's been a long time since the first version of that came out, and it had quite the facelift. It's got a lot of new stuff in it. So we've been building all this with our team in the time that they've been finalizing that one building, which they're doing a great job. So like, that's not a knock on them, like they're crushing it. But all that to say, it's like 95% done. They've been getting some feedback from us on basically, I think, some textures and things that needed change so that it was loading a little quicker and wasn't like fucking up the environment because it had too much geometry or whatever it was. So it's really close to ready. It'll be in there soon as well. The other question, will we still be able to visit Monkey Tower? Early on, yes, you will. So like first iteration, it won't have like token gated areas. It'll just be available for anyone to go in and check out. So it'll be, I think, good for Monkey DAO marketing, of course, for them, as well as just a good experience for people to be able to see and explore and look at what these DAO towers look like ultimately. Another question, when will the updated art be usable in the beta? So there will be an updated like standard avatar that's already in there. So it's one of the new avatars essentially is already integrated in there. When all of them are integrated, we're looking at a little bit. So we're still working on finishing the astronauts. Pretty much everything else is done. So we're probably looking at a few more weeks until they're finished and integrated, because that's a separate process, right? So it'll be a little bit, but for the meantime, the standard avatar that you log in with will still be customizable. There'll actually be some more customization options. So we added some new like shirt colors and things like that so you can kind of differentiate yourself better. And it does have, as the standard, one of the new updated avatars. Another question, ETA on boats. Boats, so the art is completely done. We also have new physics already for the water in general, but we're still working on the driving mechanisms for the boats. So when the driving mechanisms are complete and they're able to be integrated in this new multiplayer environment, because I think ultimately that's what we want to do. So to really drive the impactfulness of these future drops with Yaku, we want the items that are dropped to be usable. We don't want it to be another situation where it's like, hey, we're iterating, we're building, like, ooh, we've got a demo that maybe shows. We want, like, from here on out, if we do a drop, like, you can use it, full stop. Because we don't want to, like, drag you guys or potential new people along any further as far as development goes. So it's going to be a little bit, my guess is, like, early next year, if I had to guess, because we want those systems to be in place. And selfishly, it gives it more time for the market to get in a good place where you all, if you so choose to depart with your lovely boats, might be able to be in a more beneficial spot for that.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing about the boats, it might be earlier than next year. It might be also early next year. It really that does depend on um, if we manage to get the mechanics work earlier. It's not a very easy process. Quite a few stuff involved, so we try to get this in the meantime to get it working. I will hopefully have it as soon as possible, and as Bobby said, um, once we have it, we'll get it.
Okay, we're hitting the 45-minute mark here. I told the designers I'd only take 30 minutes from them. So any last questions anyone has about specifically design stuff while we have these guys' attention here? Speak now or forever hold your peace, at least until next Thursday. Because we're going to try to do this every week, guys, going forward. There may be some weeks where there's less stuff to go over, some weeks where there's more. But I think this is a fun way to see development and get a behind-the-scenes look at like the complexity, the development timelines, understanding how large the map is getting, what new interactions are getting implemented. Tomorrow, I will, as your sneak preview for some alpha, I'm going to post, we're working a little bit on some animations. So one thing we've been doing, you've probably seen some tweets about it, we've been working with like Fun Guys and Imzo and Dimension and the handful of products on Solana that are built on Unreal Engine to sort of work on like interoperability standards basically between one another. And so as part of that, we've been working on like literally everything from rigging to textures to animations. So I have a nice little video clip of an animation. It's not a twerking one. You guys already saw the twerking one, but it's a different one. It'll give you an idea of some of the interaction that'll be available inside the Yakuverse between people. So there's your little preview of some alpha. And I think I've got one more question here in Gen Chat. Dempsey says, can we drive the bikes/vans in there already or not yet? You will not be able to on the first multiplayer, no. So it'll probably be a pretty soon after that subsequent update is my guess. But you know the actual individual bike components, like which specific bike you own, are already integrated in the system as far as it'll load them. They just won't be drivable yet. We have the driving, it's like we have them both backwards right now. So the vans, we have the driving mechanics in there because they're very easy with Unreal Engine. Unreal Engine has like a standard four-wheeled vehicle driving mechanism that you can just sort of plug in there and then adjust as needed. But two-wheeled driving is significantly more complex. So basically right now we have the individual art and weapons and things for the bikes already fully integrated, working on the differentiation between driving, like as examples, between a supercharger versus a regular and getting those sort of specifics lined out. Whereas on the vans, we have the physics already in there, but we just don't have the individual vans integrated, so you'll actually be able to drive your personal one. But we've done that before already with the bikes, so it shouldn't take a long time to get that knocked out. It's just one of those things that's like priority list number one, like get the multiplayer, get the map out, have a place people can explore, and then next step, get some of these other assets and things integrated. Okay.
One thing about the size of the map, uh, it's it's not very easy to understand how big the map is, the area size, how large it is. So to give you maybe an estimate, you can create a picture in your head. The area where the pier is, like the if you can select like the slab on base of the that one. Uh, just make
Oh,
zoom out.
I'm stuck in the monkey tower. Hold on, gotta get out of here.
Okay, so um, where we did like the ground starts from left to right. This area, roughly 1 kilometer. So this area could hold like a small village in it. Yeah. About 1 kilometer and probably maybe 100 meters from the other dimension.
So it's significantly bigger than it feels. Like I
Yeah.
remember when we were out like testing running around on here, I was cracking up because to walk basically from one end of Monkey Tower to the other, even when running, took like a minute. Maybe not quite a minute, but it was like 30 or 45 seconds just to walk the length of one building.
It's
It
bigger
feels
than
forever when you're in a game, right? Because
Yeah.
you're so used to being able to get around a lot quicker.
Okay. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. I did record this whole thing. I screen recorded it. So I'm going to get the screen size chopped down so that you guys can't see my disgusting desktop in the background of just endless apps. But I'm going to get it chopped and get it posted in Dow Communications so you can go back and rewatch. And I'm sorry, mine. I might take a couple snippets of the live full downtown and maybe post it to Twitter. I don't know. We'll see. But I was really glad that everyone tuned in. This has been a good one. I'm excited for the one next week, and I'm really glad that we're doing these going forward because I think that this is like the kind of stuff that people have been asking to see, like where are we at, what's development look like, what is the team working on, and so I think this is like right up that alley.
Yeah, if I'm not
Yeah.
here next week, it's because I got fired because mine told me not to show the city, and I'm gonna get in trouble for that.
And just so you know, Kinetic, I have no power over that. You do not work within my verticals, so I have no say.
Anyways, thank you guys very much for tuning, and we hope that we answered your questions. Yeah, it was great.
We'll see you next Thursday.
All right, peace out, everybody. I'm thinking about maybe just jumping into a VC tomorrow as well, just out of boredom during the day. So if you're around, look for me. We can hang out, say what's up, and keep it pushing, keep it moving. So thank you, everybody. We'll for sure see you Tuesday. We'll have Yakuverse Day back on at our regularly scheduled time next week, and rock and roll from there, guys.